Hi everyone, welcome to Module 5. We are just about to cross the midway point of the term. We have 9 weeks in the class and this is Module 5, so at the end of this week we'll be more than halfway finished. I know some of you are probably pretty excited about the holiday season rapidly approaching, and I am also, of course, but we still have some hopefully interesting work to do in the class before we get our holiday break. Last week we looked at mental illness and mental disorders. We considered the different ways in which different societies over different periods of time have defined these concepts. We also looked at the social control aspect of it, in other words, how societies have dealt with those afflicted with mental disorders or mental illness. And in our discussion, we considered the different views of our textbook author, Kura, and one of the videos with the presentation by Insel, different conceptualizations as to what mental disorders really are. And I think some of the comments you made in the discussion board relative to this were pretty interesting. This week we are going to turn our attention to violence. And as has been the pattern in the course, we'll look at the different ways in which violence and behavior has been defined and interpreted over the course of different societies, as well as over the course of time. Different societies regard forms of behavior differently, and a good example of this, and maybe an extreme example from the Western point of view, is something called honor killing, and I'm sure most of you have run across this concept. And basically it's the idea that it is justified. It's typically a killing where the woman is a victim. It's justified on the basis of an act or actions on the part of the woman that's brought dishonor and shame onto the family. So for instance, an unmarried woman having a sexual relationship with a male, or a woman who's married having a relationship with someone who's not the husband. In this country, we regard such killings as astonishingly unjust. That it's hard for us to conceive of such a thing. But in some parts of the world, it's considered legitimate and appropriate. And it's a classic example of how there are differences in the way in which the same forms of behavior are interpreted and responded to. So we'll look at that. We'll look at some things in the United States in terms of motives. Different motives justify behavior or don't justify behavior that's violent. For instance, an NFL player slamming another player to the ground as hard as he possibly can is not considered a breach of appropriate behavior. But if you or I to walk up to somebody on the street and do the exact same thing, it would be considered not only inappropriate, but it would be a crime. Another example is the death penalty. Death penalty is perfectly legal in the majority of states, not all of the majority of states in this country. So what is it about that makes killing somebody acceptable and even desirable when in other contexts it's not desirable at all or acceptable at all? So we'll look at some of the circumstances and motives associated with violence that have an influence on what we think of it and how we process it, how we respond to it. This week we will also be doing a midterm exam for the undergraduates, and the graduate students will be turning in their outlines for their second paper. And of course we'll have conversation on the discussion board that I hope will be as interesting, and I have every reason to believe it will be as interesting as the ones we've had thus far. I really enjoy reading your observations and interacting with you on the discussion board. So I hope all is going well, and I look forward to our discussions on the discussion board as always. Have a great week.